Alrighty, welcome back to Thoughts in Stereo. Today, this is like a special Christmas episode. It's not Christmas yet, but it's a little Christmas miracle. Today, we have Justin Lee with us, who is a world-renowned market. How would you describe yourself?
It's funny even my friends still have to ask me this question, but I would say my primary business unit is in film. I would say that's kind of where my expertise is, but definitely where my fundamentals or where I grew from is from the marketing world.
Yeah.
So I would say in terms of branding, marketing, that's kind of where my expertise is, but definitely film is where I'm at right now.
So by film, what do you do in film?
So we just started our own film studio.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's rotated a lot around the music industry right now, not just in music videos, but artist profiles and documentaries. That's kind of where we're at right now. But we also do a lot of branded content, meaning commercials or little spots for social. Or, just little branded pieces like that.
Excellent. Yeah. How long have you been doing that for?
When I started with my agency, film was always a portion of our campaign rollouts. So I've always been kind of introduced to it, or at least familiar with it. But after my 4 or 5 year tenure with my agency, I wanted to be a bit more specialized. So I just chose film to specifically dive into. So I'm coming up on I think 3 years of just specifically film.
Dope. And so you've been in the industry. How long would you say you've been kind of, when did you finish school? We were talking, you graduated from University of Toronto, Mississauga,
yes,
from the CCIT program.
Yes.
And you attribute that a lot to your success in marketing and film. Would you say you attribute that quite a bit to your success?
You know what, when I was funny, I was actually just talking about this the other day, but when I was learning, CCIT meant communications, culture, information technology. So the things that I was learning in university were very theoretical.
Yes.
So it helped me build a foundation on what everything I was going to learn after that came to be. But when I look back on it, the actual thing that I learned in university, I think, was how to learn efficiently. So that translated into my marketing agency. So how to do proper research, or how to communicate with certain people, or how to write down what I needed to write down so it would articulate my point. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned in university. It wasn't actually what I was taking in, but it was how do I apply all of these process-oriented things into my work life, right? So I actually went to college at the same time as well. Those things helped me in terms of what the things that I learned in college, I actually applied to my job.
Right.
So they were transferable right away. It took me a little bit to realize how university kind of helped me down the line. So that whenever I have kids coming to me being what do you find the importance of education to be? I think it's based on the individual. Obviously I condone education. I think it's very, very smart to be precise in your field that you're choosing to kind of go forward in life with. But if you think that experience is more valuable to you, then jump right into the career. I find that very valuable as well. Right. If you think college is more valuable to you, do college. If you think university is the way, do university. Apprenticeships, I think where you learn your information from, or how you're going to ingest the information is the most important.
That's a really important point. Like you said, taught you how to learn.
Yeah.
And I feel the same about, I went to music production school in LA for a year and a half. And I had already been producing for 6 or 7 years before I went there. And it was very, very, music production 101, and this is how you create a folder on a laptop. It's literally started there. And for a lot of months I felt I was a little bit ahead and I wasn't gaining much from it. But looking back after I finished, I realized that it taught me how to adapt to certain situations and how to work with certain types of people. And it got me out of all of my bad habits of teaching yourself. Because, you know, when you jump into something and learn yourself on YouTube or reading books and all this stuff, you develop bad habits that work for you. They're not necessarily bad habits. They're just your habits.
Yes.
And they're different habits. And sometimes it's hard for other people to adapt with your habits. So you have to learn how to adapt with them just to find the best out of every single scenario instead of just who works best with you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No,
I think it's
100%.
very valuable piece of information.
It's funny because I think we have very similar experiences in that sense, because my program in school has almost nothing to do with my profession. Like I went to school for accounting, you know, like, and you know, I just finished last year, and there was, I mean, people would laugh at me when I said, you know, literally they'd go around the class, what do you want to be when you're done university? Like everyone would be like CPA, I want to work here, I want to work here. I'd be like, I want to be a musician. Like, I want to be a music producer. And I'd be like the oddball. So, you know, for me, people were like, you know, was it worth it to go to school? Or, you know, after Ric Flair Drip came out, like, why didn't you drop out of school? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and again, I'm the same as you. I very much condone getting, you know, education in one way or another. It doesn't have to be through university or college, or, you know, you get a, you know, figure out what works for you. But the same thing, I learned how to learn, and I learned how to, you know, I learned how to time manage, and I learned how to, like, those other skills that, you know, because you can make beats all
for sure,
you know, as the day is long, you can make beats, but it doesn't help if you don't know any other skills. So I think that in that sense, I fully hear where you're coming from. Now, is marketing and film, is that something you always wanted to do, or was that something that you kind of discovered at some point?
I always had just a creative industry in general. I think I gravitated to naturally, and honestly, like, I think my parents had like a big influence on that. I know typically like Asian American parents or Asian North American parents is like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, you know, be an accountant. But like my parents always were like, just if you do what you're passionate about, in the end, like, you're going to motivate yourself, and hopefully it'll turn into something that you can categorize as successful. Wow. So it was something that was in my head very early on.
That's awesome.
Right? So I find myself a bit lucky.
You got great supportive parents.
Yeah, it was, and even when I would like have some like rough days, like starting off my career at my job, like I remember my mom would always be like, just ask your, like, do you love it? And I'd be like, yeah, I love it right now. And she's like, okay, then the hard stuff that's going to come, like, it's going to come. The second that you're like, you know what, like, I don't want to do this anymore, is the second you need to reevaluate your situation, which is what happened at my marketing agency. Like 5 years in, I was like, where am I going to see myself going after, like, what's the next step at this agency? You know, like, I'm on the creative team, like, what's the next step? Is it director? Is it vice president? Like, what is it? And then the answer that I found myself was like, I don't actually care what the next step is, right? Because like, I'm not learning anything new.
Yeah.
And like for me, like that was the reason why I was like, you know what? I need to learn something new. That's how I'm gonna motivate myself. So I'm gonna jump into film, which is a very large. It's a lot of a learning curve.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I first went into film, they use a different language. They use different words. They use, like, positions or words that you never heard before. Yeah. And I was literally reading a book being like, this means this and this means this.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And luckily, like you said before, like, the client relation skills were transferable, which was a primary objective of my position. So that stuff was transferable. But I still needed to learn the back end so I could be in rooms and have conversations like at a certain level, just to know that like they're talking about stuff that like I understand. Yeah. You know, not just like fake it till you make it. I'm like, yes, I get that.
That everyone in the room knows that you belong there.
Yeah.
And that you're not just some guy that ended up in the room.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
There's a lot of people that hit that. I mean, I'm sure they message you. I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of people like this, but I know that they messaged me basically saying, you know, I have no motivation at what I'm doing. I don't know where to go from here. And then they just feel lost because, like you said, when you were at your marketing job and then you know, you were able to say, okay, film is something that I'd like to pivot into. But a lot of people would be at your marketing position and be like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And they'd be too scared to, because like, what if I fail doing this? I've already, you know, you've already had built a successful, you were in a successful position at your job and you were on the creative team, like you said. You know, how was it like like, I'm sure you were kind of nervous leaving that.
Of course.
How did you overcome that?
So the thing was that I always stick to where my motivation is going to come from, but at the same time, like, I still need to be logical about what the outcome could possibly be. I can't just be like, fuck this job and just do whatever.
Right. Of
course.
Right? The people around me was a big influence. So at the time, like, I had people around me that were entrepreneurs and like did make certain jumps, and like people that I deem role models. And I think finding a good role model is so important in life. So when I was making the jump, I just got reinforcement that like this was my time to do it. And especially at like a younger age, like I think the time of being a bit risky is definitely something you should take into consideration, because the way I see it is you can take risk when you're younger, right? Because you can rebound. Not to say you can't rebound when you're older, but
it's easier. Yeah,
it's easier to rebound when you're younger.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the next step that you take a risk on, it might not work out, but the thing that you get from that, you have no idea what doors that could open.
Yes.
Right? And so I took a jump into film. I went to a production company that was a bit corporate.
How'd you get your start in that?
So they actually, I hired them to do film for my campaigns.
Oh, that's good.
And then we built a working relationship. And then when the president of that company caught wind of me wanting to leave, he offered me a job.
Nice. Okay,
so
cool.
I made the jump. And I remember I was like, yeah, this company works on some cool shit, but it also works on some like really corporate shit that I don't give two fucks about. But you know what? Like, I still need to learn, so let's do it.
Sure.
Right? The corporate side of that completely took over, and then my passion and my fun for that film industry completely caved in like a 2 year span.
Really?
Right? So my risk didn't actually work out, but the people that I met at that studio allowed me to build relationships tight enough to start my own film studio. So now this is going to be my life for the next 5, 10, forever.
Yeah.
Like, who knows?
Right.
So yeah, I made a risk and it didn't work out with this company.
But it did work out. Yeah.
It did work out because of the people that I met. That was the most important thing that I pulled from that. So in another way, yes, my risk pivoted, but it turned out. So you don't know what door will be open from the risk you're taking.
Yeah.
And that's also a testament to your character, because maybe not everyone in your position would have built those relationships with the people that you were working with. Like, there's a lot of people that maybe as soon as they realized that it was very corporate and it wasn't for them, they would have just put their head down and said, okay, like, this just isn't for me, like, this isn't. So I think that's important to note that when people, like listeners, whoever, are in this situation, you know, there's always, not always, but 95% of the time, there's something you could take from like a bad situation or a situation where it's not working out how you anticipated. Usually for me, when I'm in those situations, I find that even if something doesn't work out, there's still a benefit to it that could lead to something else, like how you have now, or you had built those relationships, and you know that kind of transitioned you into starting your own company. So, you know, maybe if you liked it there, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in right now. You know, you never know where life takes you. So it's also, as much as it is like about taking the risk, it's about when you're there, you have to make the most out of it for yourself. Because being there is one thing, being there physically is one thing, but being there physically and mentally and like always being on point is a whole nother game. So that's like really, yeah, I mean, that's impressive. And that's a lot of, you know, that's motivational for a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of people will find that motivational.
I hope so. Cause like and my parents telling me this ever since I was younger, just cause, and this is another point that I wanted to make. And just cause you're passionate about something and you're like, yeah, I love this. Like, this is what I'm going to do. There's also all of the back end information that you need to learn about your passion to allow you to be successful. Just because you love something doesn't mean that you're going to be good at it.
For sure.
You truly will love something if you will take the time, hold yourself accountable, and learn the things that will allow you to be amazing at the thing that you're passionate about.
Yes.
And that's super important. I always tell the students that are around me that thing first.
To take the time to, if you you know that you really love something, if you take the time to learn it all.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel guilty. I feel like I don't spend enough time learning new stuff. And you know, we've spoken about this before, how everyone has time. Yeah. And everyone likes to say, "Oh, I have no time to do that." But everyone has time to do that, you know? I do have time to take guitar lessons, but I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I think I don't, and I don't want to make the time, but like, then I feel guilty some days, like, I could be doing more. Like, right now, I'm not working at learning anything new. The past 6 months I've been in the studio, I feel like I've been doing a lot of the same things. And although, yes, I'm making music I like, for sure. I'm very happy. But I'm not progressing enough, you know?
And I agree with that. You think you're kind of like stuck in like your process of success and like you know the recipe to like get what you need. But you're actually learning stuff, like even our conversation before this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping that the conversation that we had meant that you learned a little bit more, right? So it might not be specific to music, but people need to understand that information will come from everywhere, right? And when I was coming up, I found the most value when I was talking to someone and they were telling me their experience on something or their take on something. Because now, like, yes, I might just be having a conversation, but I'm actually intaking everything you're saying and I'm learning. So it might not be reading a book or it might not be taking a university class, but I'm still learning from every single person that I'm talking to. That's where I find my information to be most valuable.
And that's what we're trying to do with the podcast, guys.
Oh my goodness.
What a segue.
Like, honestly, this guy's like plug master over here. Like, plug anything else?
Plug in that you're already watching. No, it's
I want to ask you, because there is a lot of artists and producers, and I watch this podcast, and I had heard someone say once that nowadays success is 80% marketing and your character and who you are, and 20% the music. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know if it's 80-20. And again, like, percentages are subjective.
Right.
But I will say the most important thing is the music. Like,
you still think that?
100%.
Right.
And that's coming from someone from the brand side.
That's right. That's why that's what I want to know.
The music is the most important, for sure. But I will say that there's so much fake shit out now, and like just all of these people that are putting on a front because they know the recipe to success. That I personally feel that the people that stay true to who they actually are and can portray the message of who they really are efficiently are the ones that are kind of skyrocketing through certain categories. So like, the brand side is very important. And I always look at it like Chance the Rapper, for example, right? He is himself on every platform, you know, like, he does it his way, and his character cuts through every piece of his entire process, right? From his merch to his music to his collaborations. And that's someone who's sticking to who they are. And because there's all this fake bullshit like hovering the music industry, those people that stick true to who they are the ones that I think that
they cut right through.
Yeah, and their story will be heard, because the music is part of the narrative, but that's where also branding is very important. Like, I believe that everything needs to be a complete package. Right. So what I mean by that is your aesthetic or your visuals need to be in line with your music, because you want everything as a combined package to tell one story. Right.
It's a great point.
If I look at a certain artist and I hear their music, but then, like, for example, let's say I'm listening to an R&B artist, but their visuals are making me think of like Metallica, right? That's telling two stories that I don't know which way to gravitate towards, right? There are ways to implement Metallica visuals into your story, but it can't be like, oh, I'm listening to R&B, but why does she look like that? You know? And it boils down to even more than just what they're wearing, what their logo is. Like, it goes down to their font. It goes down to the colors that they choose to be around them. Like, it comes down to their collaboration, and even how when they collaborate, the visuals intertwine with each other. Every artist has a logo, right? Every artist has visuals, right? It's how those two things can come together and seem like they're cohesive in some way that you're like, oh shit, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool, right? So when I look at an artist, still music is the most important,
of course,
but the visuals and everything accompanying that artist in terms of their brand guidelines needs to be hugging that music, so it's just one thing.
So that's really important. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great way to outline it.
Yeah.
That's why this guy gets the big bucks, eh?
Dude, it's really like weird to think about. When you were explaining what you did for your artist and how you have the brand book and you send that out to all of possible brands that you want to partner with, just so they know down to, yo, here is the color code for what needs to be behind her at all times. And this color is never on their shirt. It's only on their pants. That's a dumb example, but you know
It's
what I mean?
not
Like,
dumb. That's not dumb.
But like, that's so crazy that it's broken down that much and no one knows that. It looks so effortless. It looks like they're just like, oh, I'm just dressing like me.
Yeah.
But like it's so
Like it's thought out.
It's thought out. It's planned. It always looks great, and that's why those people do well.
And it has to be a consistent story. Like it needs to be in the same realm, no matter where you're kind of like your trajectory takes you in the music industry.
Do you ever see certain artists that like they start with one brand and after a year they're like, yo, let's like switch it up, and they just keep switching shit up? And you have to like, or like any brands that you work with that like they're constantly trying to change things and it's affecting them. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, actually, you know who it's because she came up on my feed today. It was Iggy Azalea.
Oh yeah.
I feel like she tries to change it up too much.
So much, yeah.
It's like, are you pop? Are you hip hop? Like, why do you look like that?
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? And like, I think you should definitely playing with accents or like different examples of certain things.
Absolutely.
Like, you got to test out if
You
it
need to
works
evolve
or
as
not.
well.
Yeah. But like, when it constantly the movements are like erratic.
Yeah, like
You're just like, wait, how did you get there though?
Yeah.
Like when it's like a natural progression of things,
Yeah.
you understand.
Yeah, like people love character growth. I think people also identify a lot with watching a character. That's why movies are so successful, or like sci-fi or action movies, or with lots of sequels, when there's a proper development for the character.
Yeah.
And people identify with that.
1000%.
So that's why, like, when people look at an artist, they want to see the same thing. You look at Drake 10 years ago, what was it, So Far Gone, basically.
Yeah.
He was
Different guy.
different guy, completely different guy. And his growth he's like,
For sure.
I want to be famous. I'm the man. I'm telling myself I'm the man. And then he went to, now I know I'm the man, but like now everyone else has to see it.
Yeah.
And now I really am the man, and everyone sees it. Like, and everyone's like, damn, like that's a 10-year progression. And a lot of artists don't get 10 years.
Oh my, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And he had 10 years to make that statement.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people really resonate with him, because they're like, wow, like Drake really started from the bottom. You know what I'm saying? And his character was there, and he never really changed who he was.
Yeah.
He started off, he was singing, he was doing the singing rapping thing. He's still doing the singing rapping. His look is more or less the same. His brand is
That's very true.
more or
That's
less
a
the
good
same.
point.
He's been on the Owl since 2009. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's like a good example of someone who stayed true. So I was going to ask, when you are working with, say you're working with an artist in whatever sense, it's important to have a plan from the start, but how far ahead do you plan, like knowing how erratic the music industry is and how things change every day? Is it worth it to have like a 5-year plan, or are you looking at more of a 1 to 2 year situation?
I think that no matter what you're doing, you need to have 1, 2, 5. Like, you need to have at least a pocket of what the short term is going to look like and the long term.
Right.
Because technically, like, if you're building out a short term plan, that should be a leak into what your long term plan is going to be.
Yes.
Right. So I always kind of have my sight lines down the road, and I always kind of like look at what potentially could happen from that. Like, for example, when I was building the brand guidelines for the artist that I'm managing right now, I wanted the logo that we created for her to be something of meaning to her.
Of course.
So that's going to be attached to her for the rest of her career.
Yep.
Right? So instead of me being like, okay, my designer's going to give you 5 options, like this is what they are. I went, can you send me some things that are of meaning to you? Like little like notes or like toys or whatever.
Like you asked her to send stuff?
I asked her to send that to me.
Interesting.
So
yeah.
she sent me a post-it note that someone very close to her wrote, "Have a great day, sweetie," and then drew a heart with a dot. But it didn't really look like a heart. It just looked kind of like an oval, but you knew that it was a heart.
Interesting.
So it was a heart with character.
Wow.
Right? It wasn't like a corny like.
Yeah.
So we extracted that digitally, And then we made that heart her logo. We kept it in the same exact whoever wrote it, because we knew that whenever she looked at that, she's going to be reminded
She'll
of
be able to
whoever
tell
wrote
that
that
story.
note that was like, have a great day, sweetie. And then thinking long term, it would look amazing on merch. Straight up, it would look great on merch.
But that's crazy.
That's great.
Really great.
That's like great. The two parts that are great about that on your part is, you know, knowing or asking her to get something that means a lot to her, because you want your artist to be happy with who their, like, what their brand is.
100%.
Like, or else like they lose the motivation to do it.
Yeah.
And second of all, you know, turning something like that into a multifaceted, it's more than just a logo. It's going to be merch. It's going to be who she is. Like when people see that, they're like, oh, that's artist.
Yeah.
It's a her, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they see that, they're like, oh, there she is. That's artist. Like you look at the owl, you're like, oh, there's Drake.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the same thing. So it's that is so important, and for her, it's something to be proud of, and it's something that means something to her. And I think that's like such a small thing that people don't think about. They're like, they want to just get something that looks cool, but it has no real association to them. But like that is so important on your part to do that for her. And that's incredible that you guys were able to do that. It sounds like a really like personal and you know, a very special thing.
And there was more than, because I was fortunate enough to see the brand side on how these brand guidelines are built. That's another thing that I kept transferable into the music industry. So when I wanted people to see her brand guidelines, I think of it like a book. That's her story, right? And I want them to, as they're going chapter by chapter, it's just building on the story.
That's right.
So for example, I had questions for her before we even built it. They were just like, how would you characterize yourself? And just little pieces of information that's coming from her. And then I also knew that she is a poet, right? So I was like, send me a couple poems that are of great meaning to you, or you think represent yourself the best. So I'm collecting all this data from her, right? So now I'm piecing it together into this brand guidelines, but there's obviously a title page,
right?
But I start with the poem. The first page after the title page is the poem. And the reason that I wanted to do that is the poem in itself is beautiful, but also whoever's reading that is someone that doesn't know her at all, right? So they're reading this, and now that eases their way into the rest of the deck. They read that poem surrounded by her colors, little hints, little graphics of who she is, and then they're like, okay, I kind of have an understanding of what direction this is going to go in, or who she, at least at a top line, who this is.
It sets the tone.
It sets the tone. And then as the pages go on, it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. So by the time that they're done that deck, they're going, okay, I have a fair or great understanding of who this artist is.
Wow.
And that's how you should build your brands as well.
No, absolutely.
Right? Like it needs to be a story that someone sitting at the other side of the table be like, I get it.
Yeah. It has a beginning, middle, and then I don't think the end would be written at the beginning, but it, you know, it's open for an ending.
100%.
That's so interesting. Nick was telling me that you were working in Korea for a little bit.
I was, yeah.
How did you find your experience working in Korea versus working in North America? Is it different, or do you?
It's so different.
Yeah, I would imagine.
It's so different, and like before I get into this, I'll just say that like this is another risk I was taking, like in my age of being open to taking a bunch of risks, especially as someone who's just starting their own company.
Yeah.
I was like, it was a calculated risk, but I knew that the people that I would meet in Korea could potentially lead to an international revenue stream for myself and my company.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So something that I was ready to do. I didn't know really what the outcome could be.
Yeah.
But I was willing to take the chance.
Yeah.
So I went out there for 5 weeks. Granted, I had a few meetings set up already. My cousin's a women's fashion designer in Korea, so he had a couple plugs into the entertainment industry.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I had a couple of things set up. I wasn't just going out there with like a map. Where is this record label? You know? Yeah. So I had a plan, obviously, but I took a chance. And then the biggest lesson, number one, is cultural business ethics.
Yes.
And it's something that like, I guess you could find it in a book somewhere or like learn about it, but like it's just so different. And I'll give you one example. So my dad has worked with people in Korea and he's been in that environment, so he was kind of like prepping me for that room.
Yeah.
Is your background Korean?
I'm Korean.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So he goes, listen, like in Korea, there's a hierarchy system in business based on age. And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. And he's like, so if you're either the oldest or you're in the highest position, that person is right.
No matter what.
Whatever they say, that's the way. And I look at him, I'm like, but what if they're wrong?
Yeah.
Like, just because they're older doesn't mean they're right. Do you know how many dumb fucks I know that are older than me? Like, age means nothing.
Yeah, and it's true.
Right?
It's true.
And that's coming from growing up in an environment, like, I'm hoping that, like, logic would be the first reason why you would be like, wait, I don't give a fuck that you're older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
1 plus 1 is 3. It's fucking 2. I don't give a fuck that you're old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was one thing. And then people fall in line. So ever since I started my career, I hated hierarchy.
Right.
I fucking hated that.
Yeah.
So like even in my position now, I hate when people call, oh, that's my boss. I'll X that right away.
When people call you their boss. Yeah,
boss.
yeah.
I'll X that right away.
Yes.
Because the thing is, like, the one thing I really respected about my first director at my agency, he always made it feel like everyone was at the same level.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what position you're, because he was right. It's like, when you're in a creative brainstorm, you have no idea where that one inspiration will come from. It could come from the accounting department.
Yep, absolutely.
You have no fucking clue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? So for you to kind of like, oh, I'm in this role of a president, like my word is final, like that's bullshit. You know, so like I always tend to gravitate towards the environments where everyone is equal, or the feeling is that everyone is equal.
You're working together instead of working for.
Fuck that. I hate that. Like, oh my God, that's my boss. Like, I fucking hate that shit.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's their whole culture out there.
It's the whole culture. It's like, oh, he's
nuts.
the boss, and like you have to listen. I'm like, I don't really fuck with that. Straight up, I don't really do that.
How did you handle that?
You know what? Luckily, the situation didn't present itself to me there. I would say maybe once, but it didn't happen a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it was just because of the people that I find that the music industry folks were more North American based anyway.
Yeah.
So like, I think that cultural crossover wasn't that like noticeable there.
Yeah.
But it was definitely, and even on the smaller scale, so drinking is very embedded into that business culture. And the way that I see it was 9 to 5, these business dudes are doing administrative stuff, or they're in the office.
Yeah.
But from like 5 to like 10, that's where they're closing deals. Business ops, business development, closing deals. You're sitting across the table eating and drinking. Like everyone drinks every day there.
Wow.
And I don't fucking do that here. So I'm just trying to stay alive at that point. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Another round for the table every time.
I'm like, no. But even on Korea's very respect based. Like if you disrespect someone, it's like a big deal.
I think a lot of Asia is like that as well. Yeah.
So for example, like if you're younger at the table, so they primarily drink shot. It's called soju. It's like 20% like vodka. And you just shoot it. Right?
Dude, so, I got halfway through a glass of wine and I'm wobbling.
I know. And also you have to cheers before every drink. I'm like, this is fucking exhausting. I'm like, how about one cheers? And then that's good for the rest of this dinner.
What's the word for cheers there? Do they do like a certain chant?
I would say like kombe. And
they like shout that type of thing?
Kind of. Or we just say
I'm
cheers.
Just curious,
yeah.
Oh,
no,
okay.
it's true. I think it is. I think it's kombe.
Kombe.
Yeah.
Fire.
Okay,
I
cool.
like that.
But it's every time there's a cheers and then the shot goes down.
I'm like, can I just not cheers on this one? Like my fucking arm is just like, Jesus. Anyways, and so if you're younger at the table, you have to cover your mouth and turn away. So you got to drink like this.
If you're the youngest at the table?
Yeah, if you're younger at the table.
But what's the middle? Like, what's the age that you have to be younger than?
I think the oldest person is the only one that doesn't have to turn away. So everyone cheers, and they're literally just like this. Yeah.
That's incredible.
And I learned that the hard way because I was first time I was like, cheers, and I like threw it back, and they're all like,
excuse me, man?
I'm like, oh shit. Was I not supposed to drink my drink?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? But then you have to live with the cultural
Do they explain
ethics.
why?
Yes, and they knew that I was not from there,
Absolutely,
so they're lenient. But there were things like that I was learning, and like you just have to live with those cultures sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
You got to learn to adapt.
Yes,
like
100%.
how we started the episode. You know,
Yeah.
you have to learn how to adapt to these certain situations and how to work with certain types of people,
Yes.
and how to learn to speak so that you know you're not going to offend anyone, whether it be culture or whatever it
Yes.
is. You know,
I think patience is another thing that's very important. Like, you're not gonna like everyone.
No.
God,
you know
no.
what I
and
mean?
you don't have to either.
Yeah, exactly. But
no one
when-
expects you to.
And when people run out of patience, it's like there's gonna be situations where you need to work with people that you don't like.
Yeah.
But there's still a job that needs to get done.
Yes.
So let's have a bit of patience. Let's mature a little bit and just understand that this is the business part and your personal part can be completely outside of it. And that's another thing that I think people should like be very, very aware of.
I'm gonna ask just something just because I'm curious now, not even really to do with music. Do you speak Korean?
Yes.
Did you
But
find that they treated you any differently out there because you were like Korean American versus
1,000%?
really?
So
Even though you spoke Korean and everything.
So I spoke when I was going in. My understanding, my comprehension of Korean was
Yeah.
great. I could, if you two were just fully speaking Korean, one, I would be impressed. But two, like, I would understand everything.
Right.
So that bode well for me.
Sure.
But how I would reciprocate was kind of like 50-50 when I went there. But if you're like engulfed in the environment, you pick it
Yeah.
up very quickly, right? But I don't look like a typical Korean person. And that's another thing that I have to be very patient about. So I'm covered in tattoos.
Right, yeah.
Right? Tattoo culture is not big there. So like I remember when I rode the subway for the first time, I literally had older ladies like holding onto their purses, like leaning away from me.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Really?
And I was like, damn,
That's
like
crazy.
that's real. It's like this here.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously when I was with like music industry or like film industry people,
They
like
get it,
whatever,
yeah,
they don't
yeah.
give a fuck.
No.
But like the older demographic there, they're like, what the fuck is this guy? And they would like turn away. And
Clutching their pearls.
I remember I went 5 years ago once, and I was getting into a cab, and still at this time my comprehension is there, right? It was the first cab that I was getting into. I get into a cab and it's this old Korean guy, right? In my head, I've already thought of the Korean sentence I need to say to get to where I need to get
Yeah.
to, but for some reason it came out in English.
Yeah.
So I asked him in English, I'm like, can you take me here? And then he kind of like looks at me, gives me kind of like a dirty look. I'm like, are you going to take me there or not? Like, what is this look?
Yeah.
Right? And then, so he thinks that I can't understand Korean.
Yeah.
So he just starts shredding me. He's like,
Oh my God.
this fucking like, you look Korean, but you can't speak Korean. Like, you disgrace our country. Like,
Oh my
fucking
God.
second gen, this, and that. I was just like, oh, damn.
Did you hit him back? And you're like,
No,
yo, I speak Korean, bro.
I should have. I really should have. If it was a movie, like it would have
Yeah.
been really funny if I like hit him back with I speak Korean. But like, I was just like, that was another lesson learned. I was
For
like,
sure.
damn, like these guys, obviously I'm not from here and they've made it very aware. But at the same time, like the people that I met there are my homies. Like they've accepted me for
Yeah.
And they actually have a term for a second, like a American Korean. It's called a kyopo.
Kyopo?
Yeah. So it's literally a second generation or like
Yeah.
North American Korean in Korea.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
That's dope.
Yeah.
There's a lot, do you find that there's a large Korean population in Toronto and like the GTA?
Yes. I find, and you know what's funny? I grew up in Etobicoke.
Right.
I didn't have one Korean friend. I had one Korean like
Acquaintance. Yeah.
that would help me cheat in calculus.
Fire.
Straight up. Yeah. So
Do you think he only helped you because you guys were like
straight up, we had an unspoken Korean agreement where he was like would slide his paper a little bit more to the left, and I'd be like, okay, cool. Yeah. But then, as like, all my boys are Italian, literally all of them. They're all named Francesco. That's not even a joke. They're all named Francesco. Yeah. And they're all cousins too.
Oh,
I'm not even joking.
It's funny how Italian people.
Oh my gosh, the 3 different Francescos.
Yes, yeah.
That's right.
It's funny how
Every time
Italian
it
people
is.
have like 3 names that they're just like, which one are we
Oh
gonna
my
pick
God.
for a kid?
Yo,
Like Dominic, Francesco.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's family is just Anthony.
Yeah.
Everyone's Anthony.
Tony, yeah, Tony.
It's Anthony, Tony, TJ.
Yeah.
It's like Tony Jr., Tony Senior, this and that. I'm like,
I love
how do you
it.
tell these people apart?
I know. Greeks are similar in the same sense. John, Peter, like Greeks are the same
Yeah.
with. I have 10,000 Johns and
Yeah.
Peters in my family.
Well, yo, Korean's the same with the last name. The 3 primary last names for Korean is Lee, Park, and Kim. I bet
Yeah.
you 80% of any Korean you're gonna meet is gonna fall under those 3 names.
Yes, yes.
Right?
I've seen Lee quite a bit of times.
Yeah.
But like in Portugal, it's John or Maria is the first name.
That's
like
incredible.
like if you're born there and you spend your whole life there, your name's Maria or John.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
João this or Maria this
Yeah,
or what,
yeah.
and then it's like your middle name is your actual first name.
Right,
you know,
right.
That's funny.
Yeah.
weird.
But so
So, as I kept, like getting older and like meeting new people, like I like randomly started gravitating towards like the Korean people that were in. I don't know why. I just like my partner, my 50-50 partner at my studio, he's Korean.
Oh, nice.
And I can honestly safely say that was like my first Korean friend. And that was when I started at my film studio, which is like 3 years ago.
wow.
Yeah.
Right? And now all of a sudden it's like I meet all these people in Korea. That's who I had to meet in LA. And now all of the people that I'm like rotating my business around are all Korean.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like crazy how life kind of like switches things around.
Yeah.
Like some kid who like never thought of himself as a Korean is now all of a sudden working with not only, but a large majority
who wasn't in film and didn't know many Koreans.
Hell yeah,
is
yeah.
now working with a bunch of Koreans in film.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
actually so interesting.
Yeah.
It's such like it's just, it's funny how those kind of things kind of work out. How, who knows, like maybe you feel more drawn to them just because maybe you are Korean, you kind of
Yeah.
identify, or maybe like that's just how it happened. Like
Yeah.
it's so, it's very interesting to think about. Like I've never really been around a lot of other Middle Eastern, Iranians especially, or Greek people in this industry, but maybe one day I'll have that moment where
There's a couple.
they'll all
Portuguese
start
guys.
flooding in.
Yeah.
No, but that's interesting because I just asked because there's a few really dope creative Korean creative people in the Toronto area that I know, and like Uptown Boy Band, the anti-K-pop group, I'm big fans of those guys. And good friend of mine, Chris, he's a great sound designer, and I was just curious, like, I think there's a good Korean scene out here, like a lot of it's a anyways, getting off topic, but I wanted to ask you one more thing. So now that you're in film, what, like, recently, music videos, film for artists, like, what have you been impressed with? Like, what have you seen and been like, wow, like that's cool, or I like that a lot, or that's great for the artist, like stuff that you have been, I guess, just impressed with
That you've never seen before.
I find that it's tough. Actually, no, that's a lie, because the animation world is getting next level right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's literally making something out of nothing.
Yeah,
that's navigating through that world, especially at a creative level. It's like you could literally think of anything. Like, reality doesn't mean anything at that point. You could just think of something
and
then an animator can make it.
Yeah.
So that world, I think, is really, really taking off. And the thing that I'm finding is there's a lot of live action and animation crossover, meaning there's someone filming it, and then in post-production, animator is putting
like all the new like Disney
Yes.
movies, the Lion King and whatever.
100%. And like actually, I'm gonna plug this, but like,
Just plug it.
Yeah.
please.
It's all good.
my partner, he just shot and edited like kind of like a BTS deal for The Weeknd and Mercedes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Sick.
And I find that type of creative obviously is something that I gravitate more towards. Like, I think that like live action with a bit of VFX and animations is like something that looks really cool. And like, actually, you know what's funny? When I was in Korea, the content that's created in Korea versus the content created in North America is very different.
In what
Right?
regard?
So if you watch a K-pop video, it's a lot of colors, a lot of choreo, a lot of flashbang, attention grabbing shit right off the bat.
Yeah.
To me, that stuff is like, it needs to be there. It's a bit corny though.
It's like the sensory overload type of thing.
It's like, why? Like, there's just too much going on.
Yeah.
Right. There's no story. It's like, why are you dancing around like a circus and then you're like eating a pancake and then like, you know what I mean?
It's just
like,
visuals for the sake of visuals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't really gravitate towards that. So I was in a meeting with a record label in Korea, and they're showing me the visuals for their artists. And I'm like, I got in trouble for this a little bit, to be honest, but I just need to speak my mind straight up.
Yeah.
So when I was in the room, I was kind of like, why do you do this for all of your artists? Like, why is it all the same?
Yeah.
I'm like, don't you want to mix it up a little bit? Which they did a little bit, but like, it was a lot of the same
It's a blueprint.
shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you find that people like this stuff here? Like, I just want to know, like,
You're
why is it all
curious.
the same?
Yeah.
So one of the execs, he takes me all the way. He goes, let's go outside for a second, and he takes me all the way down the
Shit.
building and outside onto the street, and he's like, "Yo, look around right now. Look up and look around." And all I see are digital billboards everywhere. On every building, there's billboards.
Right.
And then he goes, now look at the people. Everyone is walking on their phone. Literally everyone. There's public Wi-Fi. There's Wi-Fi on the subway. So he goes, people are ingesting content at a disgusting rate in this country. Everywhere they look, there's something to visually take in.
Wow.
And he's like, in order to grab their attention or counteract all of this content around them, it needs to be flash and bang. Because I need to grab their attention in the first like 2 seconds or they're already on to the next thing. And I was just like, holy shit.
That's crazy.
And I was like, damn. And they also, like, just culturally, they like the whole choreo, like K-pop, like that whole deal. So bodes well. But even that perspective, I was like, damn, that is fucking crazy.
That's true though. Like I feel like I've found myself scrolling Instagram and like the freeze frame, if my Wi-Fi is not good or something, like the freeze, I'll look at it and I'll be like, that doesn't look, I don't want to see this 15-second video. Like as if I don't have 15 seconds to give to this video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be such. I mean, we think that that's like what we are here in North America, but
no.
Like, that's a culture shock.
Yeah.
Like, that is a culture. That's a cultural thing now.
Yeah.
That is truly a culture shock.
Yeah.
That is.
But on the flip side of that, another person that I met in Korea he was like, because it's so like that, the narrative-based storytelling is coming back in as well. So the more slow-paced, like organic, like just some like beautiful shots with a nice story to tell, people fuck with that too.
Is it because they're getting tired of the fast-paced?
1000%.
Really?
Life is a cycle.
Yeah, it is.
And then once they get bored of the narrative shit, they'll
it's
come
gonna go
right back
back.
to the choreo and the fucking all that bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah.
That it's so like that is so interesting. Like, was when he brought you downstairs and you like looked around, like you had seen it, but now you were like observing it.
Yes.
Was that like a whoa moment for you?
And just like you said, I walked down that street 1,000 times before he did that to me, and I was seeing it.
Yeah.
But then when he pointed it out, I'm like really taking it in.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not only digital boards. There is 1,000 logos on every building. Like literally stacks of logos, boards, storefronts, all this shit. And I'm just like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Where I would just walk right past it. But if you really take it in, it's just a lot of shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this was this in Seoul?
I was in Seoul, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be that would
I'd
be
love to see that
overwhelming.
one day.
I'd like to see it. I feel like I'd be overwhelmed.
Yeah, it is overwhelming. Because, like, even just everything is so efficient there as well. It's just a lot. It's kind of like New York for me a bit. It's just a lot of hustle bustle, moving. Like, just at any point. There's no last call there, by the way. Yeah, that also I'm trying to like.
That's why they drink so much.
Yeah. When we go to the studio, like these guys are going at like, I don't know, maybe like 12 midnight, 1 a.m. Bust like 3 or 4 hours, and then go out after at like 4 or 5, and then I'm getting home at like
9 a.m.
9, 10 a.m. But I have projects ongoing here, and my sweet spot for emailing and calling my coworkers here is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
It's 12 hours ahead, right?
Yeah, 13.
Okay,
yeah.
right.
So I'm like getting back, and I'm like, oh yeah, this revision's great. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And then I would go to bed and then just rinse and repeat that whole thing. And I'm telling you, I don't drink like that here.
Yeah.
So when I say I'm trying to stay alive at that point, I was literally just trying to stay alive. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yo,
That gives me
even the
anxiety.
drinking process, they have these like, and I think they might exist here. They're like little like hangover tablets.
Yeah, I've
Right?
seen
I
something.
forget there's
like
a
that.
name for it. I forget
Yeah.
what it
The,
is.
the ones in
It's
Korea.
it's easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those ones. But the ones in Korea are next level. Like I don't even know what they are.
They work, though?
They're like there's like 100 little like they look like little brown balls. Honestly, it looks like little hamster shits, like straight up. And you just rip it open and you just down this thing and you wake up like a newborn baby.
No way.
Yeah.
That's jokes.
Is it those things that come in like those square containers and you just pop one out every time, or is it like in a pill bottle?
It's in a bag and you rip it and you just down the whole thing. There's all these like little balls.
Oh, it's like you take all of that.
Take the whole
Cut
thing,
this
yeah.
out of the episode and let's
Yeah.
bring this shit to North America.
I know.
Oh my God.
And you wake up like a whole new person.
Yeah, like at least your head is clear. Like you're not waking up like foggy, being like, "Fuck, I'm hungover." You just wake up and you're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that I drank last night."
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's that Korean engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight
Next
up.
level.
Yeah.
That isn't. So have you? I'll close this off soon, but. Korea, is that your main like Asian, like where do you go to Japan or China, do anything else there, or like is it mostly Korea?
For business, it's mostly Korea, and my Korean connections has led to LA as well. That's why I was in LA.
Yeah.
There's I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the second biggest population of Koreans outside of Korea is LA.
Oh wow. Oh yeah.
Yo, I live right beside K-Town.
Yeah.
I drove through K-Town a couple of days ago. Oh my God. It was actually funny that you said the billboard thing. There wasn't obviously billboards everywhere,
Yeah.
but I remember driving down the street and thinking, there's an excessive amount of billboards that
It's
like
similar,
like
yeah.
more than I've seen in like West Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like you see like massive billboards in
Yeah.
West Hollywood, but you see a lot of them
Yeah.
in K-Town.
No,
which
it is similar. Some K-Town buildings are very similar.
Yeah. I never got to experience K-Town, but it's
Yeah.
$15 all you can eat K barbecue.
Ooh, shit, you got
Don't
me
even
there.
talk to me about
Yeah.
that, buddy. But anyway, so
No.
you said there's a huge population in LA.
Yeah, so like it leaked me to LA, but I definitely do like going to Japan as well. Because when I went to Japan, the difference was that they're very accepting of foreigners.
Oh,
So like
that's good.
for myself, they responded very well. Whereas in Korea, like, yeah, they love foreigners too, but like you got to warm up a bit.
Yeah.
And then they don't typically like Koreans that don't speak Korean. That's like
Yeah.
alien to them. They're like, yo, fuck this guy. You know? Whereas Japan, they're like so helpful, so respectful.
Wow.
Everything is so fucking clean in Korea and Japan. It is crazy. Crazy.
I would love to see that because I get to
Yeah.
LA and you look on you're on the
Oh, it's-
you're on the
you're
Uber
Taking
ride.
shits on the side of the road. What
yeah.
are you
Dude,
saying?
you're literally driving from the airport to wherever you're going, and if it's 10 minutes, if it's 5 minutes even, you just look out your window, you're like, this is fucking disgusting.
I know. Some
This
parts-
place is disgusting.
And it's funny that you said that because, like, when I was walking through, I'm like, yo, LA is like, yeah, it's like the mecca of mainstream media, but it's still fucking gross. Like, some places
gross,
disgusting.
man.
I've seen people literally changing their underwear on the middle of the street beside me because they had shat their pants in the
Yeah.
garbage. And he had a backup pair as if this was like a regular thing that happened. Bro, I was.
No, I'm ready for this
It
one.
was,
I'm ready for this.
it was
Don't
right
worry.
in front of my Airbnb, and the
Oh
guy
my.
fully stripped off his clothes and just fucking put on a new outfit, like he was just carrying it, as if this was like regular for him.
Oh
Wow.
my god.
Well, he's prepared.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Preparation.
But not as many people are as
now,
lucky as
now
him.
like Santa Monica is getting a lot cleaner because
Yeah.
they've banned smoking cigarettes or any form of smoke.
Oh, no
I think
way.
you can smoke e-cigarettes because it's not littering, but it's like you go to Santa Monica and it's noticeably cleaner than
Yeah.
West Hollywood or Hollywood or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like it feels fresher almost
Oh,
just
man.
being there because you
Hollywood
can't
just
smoke
has
it.
the faint smell of shit everywhere you go.
I know. Like, if I were to live in LA, it'd be in Santa Monica for sure.
Oh,
like,
dude,
there's
the dream is
no-
living in
yeah.
Venice. That's
Yeah.
the dream.
Yeah,
By the
for
water.
Sure, for sure.
All right. Well, I don't want to get too. I start talking about our vacation plans and our retirement plans. But anyways, do you have anything else you want to add, Nick?
No, I just want to say thanks for coming.
Yes.
Thanks
Thank
for
you. I
coming
mean, this
on.
was kind of
This
impromptu.
This is yeah.
Yeah.
We weren't really. There was a miscommunication. We were not supposed to shoot one today, but I'm actually very grateful that we did because
Yeah.
you brought a lot of valuable insight to your job and what you do and for other artists and as well. Other artists, no matter what, like whether they work with you or not, I'm sure a lot of people can take away a lot of valuable things from this. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. And I hope
What's your Instagram?
My Instagram's at jylee, j.why.lee. So,
and then say whatever you're gonna say before I cut you off.
No. And the thing is, like, I'm always open to have a conversation. Like, especially like, I'm the same as you guys. Like, I want Toronto to be a mecca of like entertainment, music, whatever. And I think the only way that we're gonna get there is through like collaboration, like helping each other out. Like, I don't understand why people have all these egos that like they get like a little bit of clout. And it's like, oh, I can't fuck with you. Like, I don't.
It's a big Toronto thing.
Yeah. I just want people to feel comfortable that like if you needed some information or need a little bit of like support, like hit me up. Like, I'll for sure like at least help in what way that I can. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to all our listeners, thank you for listening again. Make sure you hit subscribe, Apple, Spotify, whatever you like to listen on, and give us a little thumbs up if you like it. And if you don't like it, still give us a thumbs up.
Yes.
Don't be a hater. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.